Good evening, and welcome to the monthly Study in the U.S. series organized by the U.S. Consulate General Mumbai for students interested in studying in the United States. My name is Sita Reiter, and I'm the Deputy Cultural Attaché at the U.S. Consulate General Mumbai. One of our top priorities in strengthening the U.S.-India relationship is promoting greater educational ties between our countries and encouraging Indian students to enroll in one of America's more than 4,000 colleges and universities. To that end, today we've organized a session on financing your higher education in the United States. Studying in the U.S. helps students gain a world-class education, create lifelong relationships, and build strong professional networks. And because we understand the effort that students and their families make in the application and university decision processes, in today's session, our expert speakers will guide you in evaluating and managing your finances, and they will speak about financial aid, scholarships, and loans. The consulate's role in facilitating your academic journey to the United States does not end with this session. Over the coming months, we've planned a series of events on various aspects of studying abroad, from applying to U.S. universities to student visa orientations and preparing to depart to the United States. Details for the monthly session are available on the consulate website and in the chat box here. In today's session, Dr. Aditi Lele, an Education U.S. advisor, will simplify the process of financing your studies. Aditi has been an Education USA advisor for 3 years. She has a doctorate in biology from the University of Arkansas and hails from a small village in Western India. Curiosity to understand and learn about nature led her to pursue a master's in biodiversity in India, followed by a doctorate in the subject in the United States. As a graduate student, she was actively involved with the international student community in various capacities, and as a cultural ambassador for the University of Arkansas. And moderating the question and answer round will be Dr. Deborah Rosario, who has a doctorate in English literature from Oxford University. During and following her doctorate at Oxford, Deborah tutored and lectured in English literature at the university and subsequently at Mumbai University. Following her doctorate, she worked as the national coordinator for the UK at the Veritas Forum, where she organized and coordinated academic events at university campuses. She also worked as Associate Academic Director at Samvada Center for Research and Resources in Mumbai, where she organized and supported research projects and academic training for prospective study abroad students. Deborah has been an Education USA advisor for 6 years. Education USA is a nonprofit, U.S. government-supported network promoting U.S. higher education to students around the world by offering accurate, comprehensive, and current information about opportunities to study at accredited post-secondary institutions in the United States. In addition to information sessions like these, Education USA advises students and their families, usually at their centers, but during the pandemic, online as well. I encourage you to reach out to Education USA as you navigate your potential path to studying in the United States. Thank you, and enjoy the session.
Great. Thank you, Sita, for the introductions. Once again, good evening to everyone attending this session today. Today's session, as Sita mentioned, is going to focus on how to think about financing your higher education in the US. If there is anyone who's attending the session, Education USA session for the first time, I would like to take a minute and talk briefly about who we are and what we do. Education USA is a US State Department, which means US government-supported organization, and our primary mandate is to provide you accurate, comprehensive, current information, and most importantly, unbiased information. Education USA International Student Advising Centers is a network. There are more than 430 centers that are spread in more than 170 countries and territories across the world. Education USA is your official source on US higher education. We are here to help you and assist you in navigating the application process, which sometimes can look, daunting and overwhelming. Um, it's kind of important to understand, that US is one of the, very popular and important destination for students, to pursue higher education. To just put things in perspective, you can, look at the most recent open door reports that, the data suggests that, there are more than 9,14,000 students, international students, coming from various countries who are attending, various US universities. And of those, a pretty big chunk, about, just over 18%, are, students from India. So there are about 1,67,000, more than, 1,67,000 students who are currently pursuing their bachelor's, their master's, and doctoral programs in the US, which, is a pretty significant number. So as I said in the, on the first slide, that, we are here to help you and assist you, in navigating the application process and to make sense of it and to kind of simplify it so that it can help you with timely research and planning. We've broken the application process into 5 steps. As you can see on the slide, the 5 steps are researching your options, by which I mean researching various universities, various programs that might be the right fit for you. Thinking about, how to finance your studies. Once, these 2 steps are really, really critical and, take the longest, you need to start pretty early on. So among the audience today, if there is someone who's planning to apply for, say, fall of 2023, about now is the time for you to start researching programs and, universities to find out, which universities you can shortlist to apply, and simultaneously start thinking about how you're going to, plan your budget and how you're going to finance your studies. So once you've done with these 2 steps, you shortlist universities, you submit your applications, and you wait for the university's decisions. Once that's done, you apply for student visa and you prepare for your departure. So, all these 5 steps, Education USA consistently does, elaborate sessions to break down each of the steps and help you, do better research and planning. So for today's session, we are going to focus on finance your studies. I want to kind of, really stress on this, that, this is a very critical step. And if you're really serious about pursuing higher education, whether that is an undergraduate program or a graduate program, a master's or a PhD program, you need to start as early as possible. These steps that you are seeing on the screen, they're not exclusive of each other. They can, work hand in hand. So as you're researching universities, you can also start, with the second step. So remember that, if we advise students to start at least a year and a half before you're planning to join the school in the US. So we will be talking about, kind of understanding what do we mean by, defining your budget. What are different avenues for reducing the educational cost, and what are fellowships and, other financial aid options available. So the session goals for today is, what goes into calculating or counting your cost. As I said, understanding different ways how you can reduce the cost, and that will really, really come in, will become easy if you start this research early on, and identifying the sources of financial aid. So let's start with the first one. What goes into counting the cost, right? There are 2 important aspects here. One is assessing your personal funds, and then planning the budget. When you think about assessing your personal funds, you want to really this is a step which is kind of a reality check, right? You really want to sit down with your family. You want to discuss what is the income of your primary sponsor. It could be your parents, it could be some of your personal funds, it could be a family friend or a relative who's going to sponsor you to study in the US, right? So it's important to sit down and look at various components of the finances, right? Look at what is the income that can be set aside that can go towards financing your education. So for anyone who's planning to pursue an undergraduate program in the US, remember your degree program is 4 years long. For graduate students, if you are planning to pursue a master's program, the length can vary anywhere from a year and a half to 2 years, depending on the field of study, the program that you are interested in. And for doctoral students, the length can really vary, it really depends on the field of study. So anywhere from 4 to 7 years or even longer So the time duration is pretty flexible for the doctoral programs. But why this is important is, when you are assessing your personal funds and, you're calculating or your budget, you have to remember to take into account all the 4 years. And I'll talk about, why that's important. But if you are an undergraduate student, you want to sit down with your parents and, talk about how much of funds can be, income can be set aside. And if that's enough to kind of, financially support you throughout the 4 years and not just 1 or 2 years. Okay. The calculating, the income that you can set aside is important, but equally understanding the expenditure is also an important part of the equation, right? Let's say that your parents are going to support you financially for your bachelor's program. But they might have plans of saving some of that funds towards their retirement. Maybe you have a sibling towards which some of the funds are going to go. So to get a very realistic budget, it's very important that you consider income as well as expenditure, because that will also give you an idea about how how much additional funds will you need to raise for the program that you're interested in enrolling. So planning a budget is very important. Remember that when you are calculating, the cost of attendance. Again, I'll talk about what cost of attendance means, but it's basically all the expenditure that goes into when you are pursuing your degree. So your tuition, your fees, your living expenses, other miscellaneous expenditure. When you're calculating your budget, you're looking at your personal funds. You want to ask yourself. And this kind of ties into the first step that I talked about on the previous slide, that as you start researching early on, and you use college search engines and look up few universities, that will give you an idea about what is kind of an average cost for the program that you are interested in. And once you do the calculation of how much funds are available to you, you can actually look at what is the average cost and how much extra funds will you need to come up with through other sponsors, maybe fellowships, or taking loans, so on and so forth. So it's super important that you start this very early on, assessing funds, and especially both for undergraduate applicants as well as graduate applicants. It's very important that you sit with your family if they are going to be your primary source of sponsors for your program. That even though they are going to provide the funds, it's very important that you understand what goes into this process. So I wanted to kind of give, a realistic picture of how the funding looks like. So, if you look at this pie chart, and I want you guys to focus on the big chunk that you're seeing in blue. So this pie chart is primary source of funding for international undergraduate students who are, studying in the US, right? So you can see here the majority of the funds, that go in towards, financially supporting the students is actually from personal and family funds. It's almost 84% out of all the funds that are going in. So what this is telling you is that yes, universities and colleges do offer financial aid, but there is a very highly likely possibility that you will have to pay the tuition and fees out of your pocket, right? So it's very important to be to consider this a realistic picture. When you look at the similar data for the graduate students, you can see that the percentage of personal and family funds towards supporting the students is slightly lower compared to the undergraduate students, but it's still a majority of chunk of that pie, right? And so, it's important that this also really depends on what kind of program you're applying to. For example, we know that, from India, a lot of students who are applying for masters or, go into STEM programs, right? Computer sciences is, one of the very, popular area of, programs that, is chosen by students, right? So there are a lot more students applying for this program. So it's very popular, but also very competitive. And so there might not be a lot of, opportunities to get financial aid in that regard. So it really depends on the program as well. You do see in this pie chart that, US colleges or universities also give a substantial financial aid for graduate students. But most of this, funds actually go towards doctoral students. And again, depending on the program, some master's program might get some financial aid, but majority of this is going to go towards the doctoral students. So keep this in mind, because it's going to be very, very important in terms of, when you're researching universities, the shortlist that you're going to make. It will be important that what universities have you included in that list. Are all these universities, are some places where you need financial assistance, or you have also included universities that are affordable even if you don't get any sort of financial support. So what we suggest, in terms of making the plan are these 4 steps. Making your budget, right? As and I'll talk a little bit more about this, but what I spoke about in a couple of previous slides. Understand what your personal funds, how much of personal funds you have. Get, research, make a plan that will help you reduce your costs. And I'll talk more about this in the coming slides. Research colleges, that fund international students. And I think this ties up again with the first step of the application process, that you have to start at least a year and a half before, when you start looking at various programs. Look at, all kinds of universities. Remember, there are more than 4,000 accredited US universities, right? There is university for each one of you. Even if you have specific financial need, right? What you want to start as early as possible, so that you can have a good understanding of how much it's going to cost you, and what are different institutions that can actually fit your shortlist when you come to that stage of applying. When you're also researching, of course, you want to look at the curriculum, the flexibility that the program offers, but you also want to get information on what kind of funding is available to international students, right? Are there any scholarships that you can apply to? Are there any fellowships that universities offer that you can apply to? A lot of times the deadlines for these fellowships and scholarships are going to be much earlier than your regular deadlines for the applications. So if you start early, you will be able to find this out. And if you think you are eligible to apply to these scholarships and fellowships, you can start that process early on as well. So, I used the term earlier, cost of attendance. So cost of attendance is, it's kind of a term that is used in the application process, right? And you will see this on the university's websites as well. So cost of attendance includes direct cost, wherein, there is the amount of money that goes towards, paying for the courses, the classes that you're going to take, the facilities and the labs that you're going to use, the libraries that you're going to use on the university campuses, right? That's the direct cost. And then there is the indirect cost. So your living expenses, right? For undergraduate students, depending on the university's policies, but at least for the first year, you will be living on campus. So, you have to take into account how much that's going to cost you. You have to buy supplies and books, some money is going to go towards that. Other miscellaneous expenses, as an international student, you will have to buy health insurance every semester, right? So all of this goes, into the indirect cost, but overall, it makes the cost of attendance as one category. Now, this slide I've put in here in the presentation to kind of give you an idea about how the pricing of education can be very different depending on the institution type. What you're seeing on the slide mostly pertains to undergraduate students. So here you can see that there are 3 different types of institutions that I have put in this table. You have a community college that offers 2-year associate degree program, after which, after you complete that, you can move on to a 4-year college or a university to eventually complete your undergraduate degree. Then you have a 4-year public institution, or what we commonly call a state university, and then there is a 4-year private institution. Right, so you can see the majority of the chunk of expenditure that you're going to incur is the tuition and fees, the direct cost, right? But look at the totals, right? You can see studying for 2 years at a community college has a much lower cost to it, right? Then next comes the public institutions. Public institutions usually tend to cost you less compared to private institutions, but also remember that a lot of state universities, because their tuition and fees are much lower, the scholarship or the funding or financial aid might also be lower compared to private institutions. Um, Remember that these figures are not fixed figures. This is a range, right? And this really, varies depending on the program. It varies depending on the university, the location of the university, and factors such as these. Um, so make a note of that as well for graduate students. Even though I've not put that in here, but your cost is going to be somewhere again. It's going to vary, but it can be anywhere starting from say $40,000 a year. And remember, all this cost is per year, by the way, and you have to calculate that into multiplying by 4 if you're an undergraduate student, or multiplying by 2 if you are a master's student. Uh, for the master's student, the cost is going to vary anywhere from 40 going up to really up to 100K as well, depending on the program that you're applying to. So if you're applying for a program, say such as an MBA program, the cost is going to be much higher than applying for say a master's in economics. Okay, so there is a lot of difference in there. So these are some of the terms again that are used in the application process. Cost of attendance is what I've already explained to you, which includes the direct and the indirect cost. Then, the personal fund that you assess, what your family can actually contribute is what is called as the expected family contribution. Remember, as I said, that there are more than 4,000 accredited US universities, right? They have, all these universities have the freedom to structure their fees and tuition according to what they are offering, right? So the cost of attendance is a variable factor. It's going to change, right? Depending on what universities you apply to. The expected family contribution is going to stay more or less constant. There will be some changes, every year, but it's going to stay more or less, constant, right? So when you take out your expected family contribution from the cost of attendance, what you get is the need. That's the amount of money that you need in the form of financial aid. Okay, and the universities that you end up shortlisting needs to have a combination where you have almost zero need to some need, so that you're covering institutions where you can get in without even having to get a financial aid and still afford that education. Okay, so it's very, very important that you understand that the need varies based on the cost of the cost of attendance. So then moving on to, what are the different ways that you can reduce this cost, right? One of the ways that you can do this is by finding best buys. As I said, there are so many accredited universities. So there is, all these universities that go through the scrutiny of maintaining a high quality of education that they offer to the students. And because there are so many, there has to be at least one university that fits your financial needs, right? So look for highest quality of education, but at a lowest cost, such as like state universities that I told you. The overall tuition and fees cost might be much lower at a state or public university. Think about the location, another very, very important aspect, right? We know that the west and the east coast is one of the popular destinations for a lot of Indian students, right? But the US is a very, very vast, large country. There is a lot in between west and the east, and the location can really, really bring the cost of attendance really down, right? So regions such as the Midwest or the south of the US, actually has really good schools that offer you good quality education, where the living cost can be substantially less compared to what you will have to pay on the west or the east coast. So I'm not discouraging you from applying to the west and the east coast, but at least consider having a good combination of universities from all different regions of the US. Another way that you can, think of reducing the cost could be, for undergraduate students. You can take advanced placement exams, which are college level curriculum exams. And if you score well, and if it fits the university policy, you can even, get some credits transferred, and that way you can reduce the cost of the education. You can take online classes. Since the pandemic began, we've seen that the universities have adapted pretty fast. They're offering you hybrid models. They're offering you online education. So if you are taking a class, if you choose to take hybrid model of education, maybe you can complete some of your credits while you are here by taking online classes, and then eventually going to the US campus to finish the rest of the curriculum. That way you can substantially reduce your cost as well. Again, you want to ask yourself though, what kind of educational experience you want to have. If you are someone who really want to spend all that time on university campus to experience and get a global exposure that allows you to grow academically and personally, then by all means you don't have to choose online education, but rather go for in-person education. But this is one of the ways to reduce your cost as well. You can take summer classes as well, when usually there is a vacation in the US, but universities do offer courses during breaks as well. So you can take some classes and you can finish your program earlier than what the plan is. Graduate students can consider in enrolling in one-year accelerated programs, right? So some programs that are 2 years, you can try and take up more credits and more classes in the beginning and try and finish that program earlier, so that you can reduce the living cost as well. Although fellowships and scholarships don't have to come through only at the time of the application. You can also apply for tuition waivers after you've been admitted to a school, right? Now remember that applying for such tuition waivers is really comes down to how you're performing academically. How are you contributing to the classroom? Because there are going to be criteria that the university is going to look at and then see if it is worth giving financial aid to the student, given how important of an asset they are to the university, right? So it is important that you maintain your academic records to apply for such tuition waivers. For undergraduate applicants who are thinking about getting their undergraduate degrees in the US, community college is an excellent option as well. So community colleges are institutions that offer you a 2-year associate degree. Okay, and once you have completed these 2 years and get an associate degree, then you can transfer to a 4-year college or a university where you do the rest of the 2 years, and at the end of the day, you get your degree, from that particular university, right? So it's a 2+2 program. Why this can reduce your cost? Because typically speaking, community colleges don't have high tuition and fees, right? So this can be something that you can look into. One important factor that I would like to point at is that when you are researching community colleges, you do want to look at the transfer articulation agreements. So once you have completed these 2 years and you've received an associate degree, what different universities and colleges can you transfer to? Are you allowed to transfer to colleges outside of that state? Are you allowed to, only transfer to colleges, within the state? Because that will also decide the expenditure or the cost that you're going to incur for the next 2 years while you study at the university. So bear that in mind as well. Now let's talk quickly about what kind of institutional aid is available to undergraduate students. So there are 2 types. One is merit-based, and the other one is need-based. As the name suggests, for to qualify for the merit-based institutional aid, of course, you want to have really good academic record. Universities will also look at other factors such as how much have you scored on your standardized test scores. Do you have any special talents? Maybe you are someone who has been pursuing singing or playing an instrument for a large part of your life, and you can talk about it in your essays. Maybe that's something that's important to you. There could be athletic based scholarships as well. What is your individual character? So what I'm trying to point at is that the universities are going to, if you apply for a merit-based scholarship or financial aid, the universities are going to look at your academic performance, who you are as a student, how are you going to add to this university, to the classroom, what is it that you're bringing with you, right? So merit overall is very, very important for the merit-based scholarships. So overall strength of your application package is what will be looked at by universities. To give out that sort of financial aid. Now, for need-based financial aid, there are two types. One is need blind and one is need aware. As the name suggests, there is a need of some sort of financial aid here, right? So the universities look at that. Now, need blind means that the universities are not going to really look at your need. First, they're going to admit you if you qualify, in terms of your, how in terms of your meritorious profile and other factors that I've just discussed, and then they will maybe look at what kind of need you have. But for the need blind financial aid, your financial requirement is not looked at the time of the applications. Okay, the decision is first made, and then the universities fulfill your financial need. So there are, do remember here though that there are only very few universities that offer need blind financial aid. Which also means there is a very high competition for this. So if in the shortlist that you're making of the universities, all the universities that you have chosen are only need blind. Remember that you're taking too much of a risk, right? Given that these are need blind universities, there is going to be a lot of competition. Lot of students with very similar, very meritorious profiles are going to apply for these kind of scholarships as well. So applying only to such schools will be too risky. So that's why having a good combination in the shortlist of your universities is very, very critical. Need aware financial aid is very is comparatively common that universities offer. A lot of universities offer need aware financial aid. So for this, your financial requirement is looked at the time of the application. Now, what I want to focus on for both need blind and need aware scholarships is that your merit is still equally important, right? You might have a financial requirement, but if your profile is not that meritorious, if you are not able to showcase your talent or your commitment, then it's going to be very, very challenging to get even the need-based financial aid, right? The only thing that you want to remember is really being honest with yourself, asking yourself that, do I have these characteristics that, I can apply for this particular merit-based scholarship, or, I can ask for, financial aid for a need-based or need-blind scholarships, right? When you're doing these calculations that we talked about, the budget, be as honest as possible. Just because there is a need aware or need blind scholarship available does not mean that you show the maximum need in terms of finances, right? Think about it from the university's perspective as well. They're going to also make that decision based on if you have a very significant financial need, the universities are going to ask that if we are going to put in so much of financial aid for this particular student, what are they bringing to the university? That's a very important question, which is based on your merit, your talents, what kind of commitment do you have towards the university. All these factors are important. So merit is important for both the types of undergraduate institutional aids. Moving on to the gradual financial aid, there is like the undergraduate students, you don't have need-based financial aid. You do some programs might have certain scholarships that they offer, but the majority, two categories that you can look at for graduate financial aid is one is assistantships and fellowships. There are basically two types of assistantships, graduate assistantships, either research teaching or other graduate assistantships where you can work in certain administrative offices on the campus, right? Typically speaking, universities do keep those for doctoral students where they work with the faculty on a research project, and then in return, the university will, waive off their tuition and even pay them decent, a living stipend. Sometimes even give some health insurance coverage as well. There might be some universities that offer that to master students as well. But as I said, it will really depend on, the program of study. It will really depend on the university and how much, what kind of policy do they have on international financial aid. Okay. Excuse me. Um, typically speaking, again, merit is very important, even when it comes to assistantships. One point that I would like to, kind of highlight is that even if you don't get assistantships at the time of the admission, does not mean that your chances of, getting one are over. You can prove yourself by maintaining excellent academic records, participating in various activities, being a volunteer at different clubs, where you can still apply for these assistantships, and even after you have been admitted to the university. So this particular opportunity doesn't end at the time of the admission. Okay, and then there are fellowships that are offered by different institutions or organizations that you can look up. There might be some business houses, some trusts that you can look at here in India that might offer scholarships. It kind of I'm reiterating this because it's very important that for all of this to happen, you need to start really early on. Some of these fellowships might even have deadlines much earlier than your regular university deadlines. And to get everything ready, all the documents ready to apply for scholarships does take time. So start early. So just to kind of wrap up that, what are the major determinants of financial aid? Maintaining excellent academic records. So if you are an undergraduate applicant, remember that your records, academic records from 9th grade through the 12th grade are looked at, right? So you want to have a really good plan from the beginning. You want to be able to showcase that, that you're able to score really well on the analytical or writing side, by taking the standardized test. As I said, that a lot of funding is kept for doctoral programs and especially for, STEM programs as opposed to the non-STEM programs. There are different ways of showcasing that you are an eligible candidate for financial aid. You have to develop an essay or a statement of purpose through which you can demonstrate that why you're an eligible candidate to get some financial aid. Demonstration of commitment to the university. Why are you an asset for the university, right? Those things are really, really important. You might be an undergraduate, or for that matter, graduate applicant, who's interested in pursuing research. Invest time in getting some experience here while you are here in India, so that your application can be really strong and eligible to get some merit-based financial aid. So now moving on to some couple of other avenues for financial aid. As an international student who studying on US university campus, you are legally allowed to work for 20 hours per week during the regular semesters and 40 hours during the break. During the vacation or the breaks, right? So for example, let's say that you start your school in fall of 2023, you complete the fall semester and spring semester, and during the summertime, that's that's what would be considered as the break time or vacation time. You can do on campus jobs as well. One thing that I would like you to take home from this slide is that, remember, on-campus employment is, usually gives you, bare minimum wages, right? It's not a significant or substantial amount that you can pay towards, your tuition and fees. So don't go with the plan that, if I get accepted, I'll work on campus and I'll pay off my tuition and fees, because that's not going to happen. It will, though, help you with getting some supplemental, getting some supplemental income. So remember that, it's not going to be a significant amount. You want to ask yourself, is it worth working 20 hours a week when you have gone there, education being your priority? Is it worth doing that? Are you able to manage everything? Because if you're going to work, say, 20 hours a week, but if it's affecting, your studies and that's affecting your grades, then it's not worthwhile to do, doing that. And on-campus employment opportunities also depend on the availability, right? So nowadays, a lot of university websites will have their own portals where they advertise what kind of on-campus employment is available. You can even check that out, while you're researching for universities from India. And it's very important for any sort of employment, for on-campus employment, you have to work with the International Students and Scholars Office, where you have to work very closely with the designated school official. Without their approval, you can't really, start any on-campus employment. So you can't just go, where there is an opening for on-campus employment and start a job. That doesn't happen. You, as an international student, you'll have to follow a legal process, and through the designated school official, you can find that out. This particular, category of severe economic hardship is almost like an exception to the rule. It happens very rarely. Um, uh, as an international student, you're legally allowed to work while you're studying only on campus. But in unforeseen situations where, say, your primary sponsor, God forbid something happens to them, or maybe, they're not able to, for whatever reason, support you financially. You're not able to find any on-campus, employment. All the resources have kind of dried up. Then you can use this severe economic hardship option, wherein you have to work again very closely with the designated school official, and really have to demonstrate that there is no other resource left. And in that case, you might be allowed to work off campus. Again, remember that this happens in very rare cases. Then you have the curricular practical training. This is, again, on-campus internship or practicum. You can do this only in your major field of study. Okay, so this kind of internship, so let's say that you're studying computer sciences, you can't do this in economics. Okay, it has to follow the field of study that you're enrolled in, the program that you're enrolled in, the same field. Okay. You can pursue curricular practical training only after you've completed one academic year. Okay. Usually, curricular practical training is a credit-bearing opportunity. Okay, so you might get credits for the work that you've done through this internship, and sometimes even get paid for it. Again, have to work very closely with the designated school official. Only after their approval is when you can start your CPT. And then the last one is the optional practical training. This is one option where you can work off campus. It's again employment or a practicum where after you have completed, you're technically allowed to do this after you've completed one academic year. But in a lot of cases, students start doing this after they have graduated. But remember that even though you can start this after you've graduated, the search for internships has to start very early on when you get on campus. Okay, so anyone who's pursuing an undergraduate program or a graduate program, whether be it master's or PhD, you're allowed to use 12 months after you've completed your program at the university. Your OPT gives you 12 months to explore internship opportunities. If your field falls under the umbrella of STEM fields, which is the science, technology, engineering, and maths field, then you can extend this OPT by 24 more months, which is two more years, right? So total of 3 years is what you get for your OPT. As F1 visa holders, as international students, again, you have to work very closely with the designated school official. And unless you've gotten an approval from the US Citizen and Immigration Services, you can't start your OPT. So usually, you have to apply for OPT much earlier, at least 3-4 months before you are going to graduate, to get that approved so that you can start in time. With that, I think I've covered majority of things that you need to consider for financing, your education. There is a lot more information that you can access on our website, educationusa.state.gov, under this tab of 5 steps, where you will find the second step, where you can find more information on this. There are some websites that you can explore to see if you can find some more financial aid. You can take a screenshot or you can take a picture of this slide. And this recording will be available to you later on, so you can always look that up again. So with that, I think I'm going to stop my presentation. Just a couple of things about Education USA, that currently we are offering only virtual advising, so you can get in touch with us. Our contact details will be given in the chat box. You can reach out to us if you have questions about, the finances or overall the application process. We'll be more than happy to assist you. Um, if you're not from, Mumbai or Maharashtra, there are, Education USA centers are in 7 different cities. So you can reach out to any of them, that are nearest to you. Again, the contact details are given in the chat box. You can sign up for our events so that you get notified for, an upcoming event. If it's relevant to you, all you have to do is register and attend that event. We do offer a lot of virtual sessions. So we do a daily session called Ask an Advisor, where an advisor like me will walk you through the application process, break down the application process, and help you understand how can you do research in terms of finding the right fit universities, what different resources are available to you, what goes into completing your application package, so on and so forth. We also do Ask an Advisors in the evening from 5 to 7, from Monday to Friday, and then from 10 to 12 on Saturdays, which is more like a question answer session where, let's say that you have already attended a basic orientation where you understand the application process, but you have some specific questions that you would like to discuss. Come and join these sessions. You don't have to register. All you have to do is click on the link and join that session. And you can find that information again in the chat box. You can get all the updates from our social media handles such as our Instagram, our Twitter, Facebook at Education USA India. This really helps because any sort of say upcoming event or an university that is offering say scholarships or financial aid will be advertised on our social media handles. So it's good to like us and follow us so that you get that information. We do have an excellent YouTube channel, which is almost like a 24/7 advising center, right? Lot of our sessions that we do, our advisors do, or where university reps or faculty members come and talk about various specific, special topics. They are all put onto a YouTube channel. So you can go, visit the YouTube channel and find, the sessions that you are interested in and see what questions you have, and then reach out to us. We also have a free Education USA India app where, you can again download that. It's free. You can get updates, on your phone for upcoming sessions, and it can be really, really helpful. This is just the contact details of all the centers in India. You can take again a screenshot of this if you would like. But we have already shared a link where you can find all this information. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and I'm going to hand it over to Deborah to start the question answer session.
Thank you, Aditi, for that very in-depth session on financing your studies in the US. I think there was a lot of useful information, and I hope that this, the attendees listening in really benefited from it. We'll now move on to questions, and we'll take as many questions as we can until 7:15 when we will close the session. I noticed that there are some questions that have already come that are not related to financing your studies. So I will probably not be addressing them here, and also due to time, we may not address all questions. So if you find that after the session, we still haven't addressed a question that you would like answered, you're welcome to write to us at mumbai@educationusa.org. The email address, I think, is in the chat box. And we will be happy to get in touch with you with more answers to your questions. So Aditi, to begin with, I'm going to start with a question that I think you've already answered in your session, but could you recap what is the average cost of living per annum for a student studying in the US?
Honestly, there is no generic answer to this. It really depends on the location of the university. As I said that, the Midwest and the South regions of the US are much cheaper in terms of the cost of living compared to the West and the East Coast. And I think the best way to find that out is start researching. Start, using college search engines such as Peterson's for the graduate applicants and maybe Big Future for the undergraduate applicants. Start going and visiting the university's website, because remember, the most official source for finding any information for that university or the program is the university's website. And the websites do a pretty good job of, giving you a breakdown of how much it's going to cost you to kind of, to enroll in that program. It gives you an approximate cost of living and other expenses that you can incur. So that information is out there. But the students need to go an extra mile and have to do the research to, find the right fit university for them.
Great. If I could just add, we usually like to say that a rough estimate for an average cost of living is, cost of attendance is about $50,000 per year. That includes tuition and living expenses. But as Aditi was saying, it's very variable. There could be universities much cheaper, like if you go to a community college, and at the same time, say if you do an MBA program or something like that, or a more expensive university, it could be a lot more expensive as well. So then it would be good just to make sure that when you go through your shortlist, when you are shortlisting universities, you have, maybe make an Excel spreadsheet and have a column on the spreadsheet for the cost of the tuition and living cost, and so the total cost of attendance, and keep noting this down for each university so that you can see what's in your budget, as we have already discussed in this presentation, and what may not be affordable for you as well. The next question is personal funding all right instead of an education loan? And if yes, then how much funds do I need to show with respect to the tuition fees? I'm combining this with another question at admission time and during the visa interview. Now, I'll just say here that we don't comment. We're Education USA advisors, so we only talk about the education process. So we'll only comment on the admissions part. We don't comment on the visa interviews, but we do conduct sessions on the visa application process, which includes the interview. Later on, we probably will do this later on this year. So you can follow this the study in the US series, and there will be visa sessions where, visa officers from the US Consulate General Mumbai will address the entire process and answer your questions. So do look out for these sessions. So I know there are a couple more questions about the visa process, about funding in the visa process. We will not answer that right now. Do look out for the visa sessions for more information on the visa process. So just to recap, the current question is personal funding instead of an education loan all right? And how much funds do we need to show at the stage of admission?
So yes, absolutely, you can show personal funding. Typically speaking, if the university or the program is, if they ask you for financial documents, they typically want to see how you're going to financially support yourself for the first year. At least you need to show that much of funds that are available to you, and that can be done through your personal funds or funds from your family or loan. It doesn't really matter, as long as you can show that funds are available for the first year. That should be good enough. So I'll also say that some universities might require you to submit such financial documents at the time of the application. Others might not. It might come after the decision has been made by the university. And just again, to kind of add to what Deborah said about the visa sessions. Yes, there are sessions coming up, but we already have some sessions put onto our YouTube channel as well. So just to understand the process, you can go and check out those sessions.
Great. And I'd just like to highlight as well, when you show funding for 1 year to the US universities, the requirement, the legal requirement is to show this in liquid form. Now, liquid form usually means something like savings or fixed deposits that you have in a bank. So if you get a letter from the bank stating that this person has this much amount in the bank, You don't have to show your account statements, which shows all the transactions. You can just get a letter from the bank stating the total amount. Then that usually is universally accepted by all universities. But if you're looking at supplying funding proof in terms of investments, you need to double check with the university if that's acceptable. Again, even with a loan, while it is all right to fund your education via a loan, not all universities consider a loan letter proof of liquid funds. So you have to check with these. Some wills, not all don't accept this, some will accept it. But if you're going on a loan, you need to check with the university to see if they will accept, offer of a loan letter. It may be a conditional offer because you can't get the loan without the I-20, but you can't get the I-20 without proof of funds. So it's a conditional, maybe a conditional offer from the bank saying that if you get an admission to the university, they will give you a loan, a provisional letter. Some may accept that. You need to check with the university. But and if they don't accept it, then you might have to make arrangements. So students have been in this position where they have to make arrangements for maybe borrow from a close friend or a family member for liquid funds in the bank. And then, you can still go borrow from the bank on a loan after that, and that should be all right. But you might need to have liquid funds. You have to see what the university defines as liquid and accordingly show proof that matches what their definition of liquid is. The next question is a really interesting question. Are there colleges that provide funding for a scheduled tribe student from India?
So US universities might not, but there could be, the government here or the state level administration might have certain scholarships, that you can apply to. But if there is something that you think, you want to check with the university, you can always write to the admissions office to get, information on whether you would be eligible to apply, for a certain fellowship or a scholarship that, that you qualify for. Deborah, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I just wanted to add that while universities don't specifically offer scholarships for scheduled castes and tribes in India, they do value what is called diversity. And diversity means that you come from a different type of group, even if you are, from a more, maybe a lower economic with low economic resources or underprivileged group or a socially different group. These kinds of things, they do look into see what kind of background the student comes from. They may have questions in your application about diversity, diversity statements and questions about, what kind of hardships you've had and what kind of diverse background you may have come from. Now, this could affect, students are looking to, universities are looking to bring on board students who do have diverse backgrounds. So if you are from a scheduled caste or tribe, you can certainly include this information in a diversity statement or an additional information in the application. You can explain what it means, because the universities may not have heard of scheduled castes and tribes. You need to explain what it means, what any hardships you might have faced, etc. And it may not give you a scholarship, but it may give you some funding. It may give you a better chance at admission. So it's certainly something to highlight to the university. It may not grant you funding. There are no specific scholarships for scheduled castes and tribes in general, but it may give you a better chance at admission and funding. So that's definitely something to highlight. A university would be interested to know about this.
I will quickly just add one more point here, that a lot of times the universities don't, mandate writing the diversity statement. It's really up to you that, a lot of times it's optional, but you can, use that opportunity to put your case forward that, why, you bring a unique kind of, aspect or, why you can be an asset, in the classroom, how you're going to add, based on the experiences that you have had. So I think that, when you're researching your programs that you're interested in applying to, look at the application requirements, and there you will find, what diversity, equity, inclusion, means to that university. And, you can see how that relates to, what background you come from, and you can, develop an essay based on that as well.
And it also reminded me that if you are the first person in your family doing a higher degree, you can mention that as well. That's something that universities like to know about, and they encourage applicants like that. So that's something you can mention as well. The next question is, you've discussed location and how location can play a role in reducing finances. But can universities and their location also affect job opportunities in the US? And we are only commenting on OPT here. We do not comment on work experience after OPT. That's a different ballgame. So this is just on OPT.
So internship, what we popularly call as the internship opportunities, right? Internship opportunities are not going to walk to you if you are in a region, where you think there are a lot of opportunities. You really have to work, towards finding the internship opportunities. The universities that, that we represent, all accredited US universities have a really good resource that they have under the Career Development Center. The resources are available to you. It is really up to you how you utilize them, how early on you start building your network. So, so really, saying that, I want to, and we see this with Indian students, that, I want to apply only in this region because, this is Silicon Valley, and that's where I'm going to, get into better internship opportunities. But that's not really true. It really depends on how you access the resources that you have, how you build your network. And it starts with, communicating with your classmates, going to the career center from, as early as you arrive on campus. Attend the sessions, information sessions that are offered to you outside of the classrooms. That's where you're going to find people. Attend career fairs. That's where you're going to pitch, you're going to have your elevator pitch, right? That's where you're going to tell the employers that, this is what I've done. I would be interested, in doing an internship. You can use professional social media platforms like LinkedIn. There is so much that goes on LinkedIn now, in terms of communication, in terms of advertising the skill set that you have, where you can, that internship opportunities might, come to you. But for that, you have to work towards it. Anything else, Deborah, that you would like to add to this?
Yeah, you've already covered most of this, but I just want to say that sometimes there are universities that are not very prestigious or don't seem to be known for great, the most competitive universities, but they might have good locations for internship opportunities nearby. And sometimes students do go to these universities and then get very good offers after that. So it might be a reason why you can diversify your list with, less, look at less competitive universities, but also see if you're going for less competitive universities, since you should apply for a range of universities, you can see that they do have, if they're in a good location, that would be a plus point for them. But on the other hand, quality of education is always the most important thing. And if a university has great quality of education, you should not have trouble finding offers for your internships and OPT and CPT. Universities also bring company representatives to their campus for the career fairs that Aditi talked about. So, and through the alumni network, etc., you will be connected with job, opportunities. Even if they're not absolutely near the university, you can always move for, some practical training opportunity. That's not an issue. You can always move to another location for that. So ultimately, the quality of education is really important. So we would always say, base your decision, you can always diversify your list to play it safe, because, obviously you can't apply for only the most competitive universities. But in terms of the actual admission offers that you get, always opt for quality of education, because that is the most important thing, and that will be the foundation of a good career ahead. I want to ask the next question, which is an interesting one. We've talked about finances in general, but is there anything you'd like to comment on financing an MBA degree in particular?
Would you, in fact, like to take this question? All I can say about that is MBA programs are professional programs, and a lot of universities are not going to have a significant financial aid. That being said, if you are a really meritorious candidate and have a lot of experience in terms of working in the industry, and are able to kind of showcase this through your essays that you write, the career goals that you have, you might be able to get some significant financial aid. But Deborah, would you like to comment on this?
Yeah, so that's exactly what I was going to start with, that MBA programs are very expensive. So that's something you do have to face. And on the other hand, they don't provide a lot of financial aid. Some do, as Aditi was saying, and you do have to be an outstanding candidate, and then some will provide scholarships. But it's not that common. So you do need to be prepared to pay for the whole cost. One thing to keep in mind is there are, STEM and non-STEM MBA programs. So the non-STEM MBA programs, as we've already discussed in this session, would give you 1 year of OPT after the program. And obviously the STEM MBA programs would allow you the STEM extension of 1 + 2 years after the program. So that would allow you to, if you get a job offer in the US for those 3 years, it would allow you to stay on and work some more to pay back loans. If you went on the basis of loans, that would be helpful. But that said, we would always say, don't just take a STEM MBA just because you want 3 years of OPT. There's no point if a STEM MBA has more math in it, more statistics. And it's a very specific kind of program, mathematically oriented. If you are not that kind of person, there's no point going through a program like that. And then, that becomes the direction of your entire future and career after that, and you would just be unhappy. So we would always say, go for a program that, does give you, the right coursework for the kind of person you are, the kind of career aspirations you have. But if you are someone who is mathematically inclined, then do look out for STEM MBA programs, because that might be helpful. If you get, there's no guarantee about getting jobs even for OPT. It's something that you have to be very, very proactive about and work towards yourself. But then it does allow you those 3 years, and you might be able to, pay back some loans, some more substantial part of your loans with that opportunity.
Can I also add just one more thing, Deborah, here, that, we always talk about return on investment, right? Especially for MBA programs. And it becomes very, very important, especially for MBA applicants, that where does your career path, it's going to go in 5-10 years down the line, right? Keeping that in mind, applying to the right MBA program at a right school, which kind of has that specialization. So maybe you are someone who's not really interested in, say, entrepreneurial kind of, MBA programs. But if you're going to apply to schools who specialize in that, might not equip you with the right, skills to find those right internship opportunities, to pay back, what you've incurred, right? Because given that MBA programs are expensive. So I think it kind of ties back to what Deborah was talking about in the previous question, that finding the right quality education in terms of gaining the right skill set would be very, very important, in addition to all the other things that we've talked about, proactiveness and finding the opportunities.
Thanks, Aditi. The next question, it is a bit of a repeat of something you've said in the presentation, but it's a good thing to get clear. Could you tell us again about community colleges, and what is the process of moving from one college to another? Do you get options at a good college if you transfer from a community college? That's the second part of the question. The third part is, if you don't transfer, if you don't get a transfer, then can you continue in the community college after 2 years? Do you need me to repeat that?
No, I'll ask you if I've forgotten,
Okay.
or you just remind me if I forgot to answer a particular component of the question. So community colleges, as I mentioned, are 2-year, institutions that, offer you associate degrees. So whether it's in arts or sciences. So the way the community colleges work is, if you are interested in pursuing your undergraduate program after that, is that you complete your 2 years, you get an associate degree. And based on, of course, how you have performed academically at the community college, and what kind of, transfer articulation agreements that community college has with various other universities and 4-year colleges will decide if, you can transfer. Now, there are technicalities that you want to be aware of, that certain universities, for you to transfer from that community college to that university might have certain, criteria that you have to fulfill. You might have to have a good GPA. Maybe you have to, have done certain coursework before you come in. The way this works is it's called as 2+2 program, right? So you complete first 2 years, and then you go for the junior and senior year at a university or a 4-year college to complete your undergraduate degree. So at the end of the day, the degree that you're going to get in hand is going to be from that university that you've completed, an undergraduate program, right? And the community colleges do have the information on transfer articulation agreements on their websites. So you can find out, with what all, institutions do they have these agreements, what kind of agreements, are these, how does that affect, in terms of, how much it's going to cost you more? Maybe where the community college is located, the tuition might be lower if you attend, if you transfer to the university in the same state, but it might change if you transfer to a university outside of that state, right? So there are, I think, a lot of factors, that go on in understanding this process. We are more than happy. If you want to know more about this, you can connect with us on the email address that has been provided. But Deborah, if you want to add more to this.
Yeah, I'll just speak briefly to some of the other components in the question. It says one point is, do you get good options? I mean, do you get options in a good college? And something I'd want to highlight is obviously getting into a competitive university requires you to be an outstanding candidate, but certainly if you apply from a community college, you're not at any disadvantage at all universities with whom they have agreements. It's very common for American students, in fact, to actually go through the community college route, and you can even sometimes get into better universities than you would have without a community college if you focus on your academics during the community college and improve your grades. Then that becomes a pathway to a better university. So there's certainly lots of good options at community colleges, and there's no reason to worry that you will not have, you will not have options for good universities. There's no disadvantage at all to attending a community college. You still get options at very good universities. If you don't, you can't continue at a community college after 2 years. So you do have to complete, in most community colleges, you do have to complete 2 years and then transfer. But I wouldn't worry about whether or not you transfer, because community colleges are very conscious, and it's a matter of their success rate as well, to make sure that students who are on a transfer pathway do successfully complete a transfer to another university. And they often have advisors for you right from the start who will work with you one-on-one to decide where you want to transfer, what major you want to pursue, make sure that the coursework you've selected will align with the transfer agreements. So they will be working with you. There's a lot of support for you at the community college. They will be working with you right from the start to ensure that you successfully transfer. So this can be definitely, it's a very good route to consider if you want to save on cost for those first 2 years. It's a very good route to consider, and you shouldn't have worries about the transfer process. We'll just take one last question because we're running out of time. Do we need to apply separately for merit-based or need-based scholarships?
So the universities will mention that if, let's say a university has a president's scholarship, they will mention if there is a deadline for international applicants and what kind of documents are required to to apply for that scholarship. And this will be mentioned on the university's website. So it's very important, as Deborah said, that if you're researching, say, X university, make an Excel sheet. Just start collecting data. You basically, start building your own database where you have information about financial aid, scholarship for that particular university, so that you can find out, what is the deadline for international applicants, what documents you need, how much time you're going to require to develop these documents. But to answer the question, that the universities will have this information on their website, because this information will differ based on, from university to university. So you will have to find it on the university's website.
Just to say that there are many scholarships, universities often offer scholarships for which there is also no separate application process. You might just be required to tick a box in the application form saying you want to be considered for financial aid, or you want to be considered for XYZ scholarship. And sometimes after admission, the university sends you additional information saying now you're eligible for these scholarships. If you want to apply, this is the process. So it differs a lot from university to university. Many of them don't actually require an entirely separate process, but some do. So it is best to check the university website, as Aditi was saying, and make sure that you've got the information right. If there is a separate process, it will be declared on the university website, or it will be told to you by the admissions office after you've got admitted. All right, with that, I think we will draw this session to an end. It's now 7:15, so it's time to close up. I just want to thank Aditi for once again for the detailed presentation, for patiently answering all these questions. There's been quite a lot of questions. Thank you also to all of you students for listening in and taking the time to spend with us and get more information about financing your studies in the US. There will be a recording of this session and it will be sent to you early next week. So do look out for the recording if you want to refresh your memory on what was said. Also, if, as I said before, if we have not answered your question because there was no time to go through all of them, you're welcome to email us at mumbai@educationusa.org, and we will respond to your email in a couple of working days. And with that, we'd also like to thank the US Consulate for hosting this session and for all the support provided. And with that, we would like to draw this session to a close. Do look out for our upcoming sessions. The next session in this study in the US series is on Feb 18th on building academic integrity and avoiding plagiarism. If you are planning to study in the US, this is a really useful session because academic integrity is really important in the US, and this session will familiarize you with all the expectations. And also, just to highlight, the links are not yet out, but if you are going to the US this year in 2022, then Education USA will be conducting a prepathon series for all admitted students. This will be coming up later in the year. So do keep an eye out on our event, the link to our events, which has been shared in the chat. And later in the year, we will be having a prepathon series, most likely, which will help prepare you for studying in the US and life in the US while you are studying. With that, we will now end the session. Thank you once again, everyone, and all the best for your applications to the US.
Thanks, Deborah. Thanks, everyone.